1798, the United States went to war against Spain in order to take control of the Caribbean area. The pretext came from the sinking of the USS Maine, which was anchored near the Cuban island. The Spanish were immediately accused of the attack, even though they sternly denied any involvement in it. The images of the sunken vessel and those of the sailors' funerals were shown in the first movie theaters of the nation, thus generating a strong ovation that allowed Theodore Roosevelt, then Secretary of the Navy, to start a war he had already prepared to the smallest detail. Only in 1980, almost a century later, would America recognize that the Spanish were not responsible for the attack. In order not to accuse themselves, however, the United States declared that the Maine was sunk because some explosives had been stacked too close to the steam room. In the meantime, the entire Spanish Armada had been wiped out, and America had become the new maritime power, with strategic positions going from the Caribbean to the Philippine Islands.
Carry us into war. So, on May 7, 1915, a ship called the Lusitania was sent where German military vessels were known to be. And, as likely expected, German U-boats torpedoed the ship, exploding stored munitions, killing 1,200 people. To further understand the obvious anticipation of this setup, the German embassy actually put advertisements in the New York Times telling people that if they boarded the Lusitania, they did so at their own risk, as such a ship sailing from America to England through the war zone would be liable to destruction. In turn, and as anticipated, the sinking of the Lusitania created a wave of anger among the American population, and America entered the war a short time after. Major General Smedley D. Butler summarizes the monetary
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, here dramatically shot by Japanese film crews for propaganda purposes, not only crippled America's Pacific fleet, it changed the course of history. Just the day before the raid, President Roosevelt had personally appealed to Emperor Hirohito not to drag their two countries into war. But it was too late. Japan had formed a secret pact with Germany to attack the Allied forces in Europe and in the Far East. America at that stage was neutral, but generally sympathetic to the Allied cause. This was an attempt to destroy American military power in the Pacific before she could strike back. Within hours of the Pearl Harbor raid, American Army and Navy officers were called from their homes and weekend golf clubs to meet at the War Department to prepare to retaliate. President Roosevelt officially informed Congress that a state of war now existed between the United States and Japan. Within hours, Congress gave him the authority to prosecute the conflict all out.
What is a false flag? The encyclopedia definition reads, false flag operations are covert operations conducted by governments, corporations, or by other organizations which are designed to appear as if they were carried out by other entities. The name is derived from the military concept of flying false colors, that is, flying the flag of a country other than your own. And now the Gulf of Tonkin incident. In the summer of 1964, President Lyndon Baines Johnson needed a pretext to commit the American people to the already expanding covert war in Southeast Asia.
3 communist PT boats attacked an American destroyer off the coast of Vietnam yesterday, and today President Johnson's response was hard and tough.
To any armed attack upon our forces, we shall reply. To any in Southeast Asia who ask our help in defending their freedom, we shall give it.
In November of 2001, the LBJ Presidential Library and Museum released tapes of phone conversations with the President and then Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, where they openly discussed plans to use the staged Gulf of Tonkin incident as a pretext to expand the war. Then, in late 2005, the National Security Agency declassified its own official history of the Gulf of Tonkin and admitted that intelligence agency officers had deliberately skewed the intelligence and claimed that Vietnamese patrol boats had attacked U.S. destroyers on August 4th, 1964, when in reality they had done nothing, even while being fired on by U.S. forces.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My mother and I were in Kuwait on August 2nd for a peaceful summer holiday. My older sister had a baby on July 29th. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There is no milk available for the baby in Kuwait.
As the Fifth Estate's Lyndon McIntyre reports, the star witness was not what she appeared to be.
I could not help but think of my nephew, who was born premature, might have died that day as well.
She seemed to be alone before the Congressional Human Rights Caucus identified only as a Kuwaiti escapee. But we've discovered she wasn't alone at all, and she wasn't just a simple Kuwaiti escapee. In fact, just a few feet away was her father, Kuwait's ambassador to the United States and Canada.
The ambassador, the woman's father, is Nasir El-Sabah.
Did the Human Rights Caucus members and the chairpeople know who she was? They knew her identity. They knew her identity.
Co-chairman of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus in Washington, John Porter says he knew nothing of this at the time.
How many people knew that she was the ambassador's daughter? I didn't.
Atrocity stories often help generate support for a war. Often they're phony, but often they work. This may have been one of those times. Dandy Arneson, CBC.